The next objection that a lot of skeptics have is, did Jesus actually die? Well, after looking at the historical reliability of the Gospels, all four of them say that Jesus certainly did die, contrary to the skeptics. Most historians would definitely say, all the ancient historians agree that he was crucified, and surviving a crucifixion was not likely, not even just based on the being hung on a cross, but by the scourging that you would go through before. Usually it would actually leave your intestines hanging out of your body, and I don't think that they would have had the medical capabilities to bring people back from something like that, let alone after having your hands pierced through, having your feet pierced through. And then, according to the book of John, the spear that went in his side, no doubt this Roman soldier knew where to place that spear to check whether he was alive or whether he was dead. And most people would agree that because blood and water came out, that the heart was probably ruptured, and the blood and the water being mixed together and bursting out of him is actually a consequence of the potential for his heart being ruptured or exploding in there after everything that he was going through. Also, Tacitus, the Roman historian, even described him as suffering and dying. And you also have to understand that the word excruciating actually comes from the Latin out of the cross. That is, pretty incredible. I mean, if you're to think that Jesus survived crucifixion, you're nuts. You're just making it up, I think, is my point here. Remember, John stood there, he watched the whole thing, and we've already established him as a very credible witness. So we should be willing to take his testimony, as it's written. If they wanted to, the other thing too is a lot of people say that the disciples made up these stories and made up all these things and made up all these folklores for people to believe in. I'm going to give you a few examples of good reasons why you can tell that they didn't make them up. It's really amazing, the Word of God, and how it puts all these things into place to defeat any of the objections that somebody might have. If they wanted to make up a story to give themselves credibility is one thing they would have to do. But they would also have to make it a credible story. Why say things like this? Why have Joseph of Arimathea, who was a member of the Sanhedrin Council that put Jesus to death, and a member of the court that killed Jesus, is the one that gave him an honorable burial, and not a disciple, not a follower? Why would the disciples want that in there if that was not true? It makes them look terrible. It actually hurts their credibility as fervent followers of Jesus Christ if they were to not be believing the things that they were saying. They put the enemy is the one who gave him an honorable burial and not one of the disciples. That's pretty incredible. Also, the empty tomb being discovered by women. That is, back then, that is not the way that you would invent primary witnesses. Not at all. People then would not have believed the testimony of women because women were like second-class citizens. They would have left and they would have said, oh yeah, this myth of Jesus came by the theory of hysterical women. They would have thought and said things that they would never have believed women. They would have thought that it was baseless and had no substance. And also, mind you, the woman that's used in the story is a woman with a shady past. Is Mary, is the one who's the initial witness of the resurrection of Jesus Christ, is the person that sees him first as a shady woman, a woman that was, in a lot of trouble. We don't exactly know what her past was, but it wasn't good. So not only a woman, but a woman of a not very credible past. So the fact that the women were never airbrushed out of the story is actually huge, that they maintained and stuck to their guns about something like that. Because it only proves that if they're willing to stand on something that weakens their arguments, in many cultures, it only proves the credibility of the rest of what they were claiming. I mean, most cultures, if you were to, in the Middle East, it's obviously the way that they look at women is very different than they look at them in the West. Well, it was very similar then, the way the Middle East is, how they looked at women to the way women were treated 2,000 years ago. And a woman's credibility was nil, was nothing. And so for them to stand on that actually gives credibility to everything else that they're saying. The next thing people get on is the empty tomb. Was the tomb empty, yes or no? Well, they certainly didn't find the body. When everyone knew certainly where he was buried, why did his opponent simply not uncover the body, simply not take the body, drag it around the streets and say, see, look, he didn't rise from the dead, here's his body right here. They knew where the tomb was because Joseph of Arimathea was similar to, maybe your congressman or maybe your mayor. I mean, he was an important person, a member of the Sanhedrin Council 2,000 years ago was a high status and honor. So there's no doubt everyone knew he was buried, and he was buried in a rich man's tomb. Plus, guards were watching the tomb and guarding it with their lives. And a lot of people might say, hey, maybe they were bribed. Doubt it. If somebody in Roman times, if you're a Roman soldier and you were given the responsibility of guarding a prisoner or especially a rebel leader, and that leader got away, it's not like you got demoted. You got killed. Your life was forfeited over, and you were killed. And in regard to giving up a rebel leader, your family might be killed. So there's no way that they were bought off to be allowed someone to go to the tomb to steal the body. I mean, the Bible talks about the Jews actually making up the rumor that the body was taken, and they stole the body, which is funny. I mean, because obviously it was a rumor. Someone was paid off to do it. It's recorded in the Bible. And even Tertullian and Justin both said that the Jews were still spreading this very rumor of the body being stolen almost 100 years ago, which gives the Bible, once again, even more credibility. Did Jesus Christ rise from the dead? How can we prove that, right? Well, the Bible is a historical document. We have that he appeared to many, many people. If you go to 1 Corinthians 15, 4-8, according to Paul, he claims to know of 500 plus people that saw Christ all at the same time. What's interesting is that Paul is using his best argument, and what is that? Is that he wrote by the testimony of others so that it could be tested. Most of these people were still alive, and if you wanted to put Paul's testimony to the test, you simply had to go ask others. And there were hundreds of people, honorable people, that claimed that they saw Jesus Christ risen from the dead. Also, you have to consider that Paul's testimony showed that not a few years after his death, that many believed that were Jews, and the traditions that Paul presented were going on for 25 years already, showing that the traditions began not even 2 years after Christ died. So, I mean, he rose, or something happened, I guess, if we want to look at it from a legal standpoint. And all these traditions were set on fire, and people were on fire for him immediately. It's not like they spawned over time, and some people took them and made these traditions, and then it turned into a religion. That's not how it worked. I mean, this definitely goes against the grain of someone who believes that the traditions of Jesus Christ snowballed. At least the conservative. Obviously, there's many Catholic traditions and many liberal traditions that don't go with the grain of the Bible and are exact traditions, not of the first century apostles. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the traditions that simply reflect the things that the Bible say. So now, let's look at the disciples. I'm going to take a look at the disciples in the next video. So actually, we're going to go to the next video because I'm running out of time on this one. So go to video number 4, and we're going to talk about what happened to the disciples, and it's really something that really could happen to you. So please watch the next video. Thank you.